Well, hello there, ladies and gentlemen. So, I want to continue on this attacking the so-called left media and propaganda um, that has been shoved down our throats for the last few decades. I'd say about 2 decades now. Um, just a little bit of where I'm coming from. I'm in my 40s and I was politically active when I was about 16. So what attracted me originally when I was young was the a lot of the ideas of the left. Now, back then, what the left meant was what it actually means in, the dictionary, in the scientific books of political science, in the scientific books of sociology. What the people that are calling themselves left today believe in is unrecognizable for someone who actually studied leftist ideology and agreed with leftist ideology back then. And that hasn't changed. Leftist ideology itself hasn't changed. What's changed is what people are pushing as leftist ideology, which is a lot of the time opposite of what leftist ideology actually is. And since I was in my early 20s, I started to see this shift. And by the time I was in my late 20s, I could really, in my early 30s, I could really no longer recognize the narrative, the agenda, the thought process, the goals, and also, of course, the rhetoric that the so called left channels and media were putting out there. And that is the problem that we're having in the country today. That is the problem with the so-called left. It isn't left. It's something completely different. It has been hijacked and infiltrated by people who either know what they're doing or they weren't politically active and they've just been brainwashed by the previous people that started this propaganda. Now, one of the things that is absolutely clear is that Islamism has infiltrated the West. And that is something that happened in Persia, in Iran. In the 79 revolution, it was leftists that ran the revolution. And then the Islamists came in and took over the revolution because they had all the weapons. And so they conquered and occupied the country. And it's looking today, it's an Islamic Sharia state. It's nothing, it's literally the furthest opposite from leftist ideology. Um, that's sort of what I see happening with our leftist movement in the States. It's been infiltrated by forces that are so far on the right that they don't even fit in the spectrum of what we in the West see as the political spectrum of political ideologies. And I don't think many of the people on the left realize that because they simply get spoon fed the narrative, the agenda, the propaganda, and they get swept up into this very emotional and manipulative movement, which they're calling the left. But most of the ideologies and most of the narratives, most of the agendas that they believe in and that they support are the literal opposite of what leftist ideology is about. Leftist ideology is about progress. The left typically wants to continue building and progressing and take a little bit of a risk, try new things, open-mindedness. That's what is synonymous with the left. The right, being more conservative, they're more hold on, hold your horses there. Let's plan this out. Let's be a little bit more orderly. Let's not go so hasty. What we have works. Let's not change it. And then the left is the aspirational person, the entrepreneurial person that wants to no. Let's make this better. Let's try this new thing. What about this? We could make this so much better and better for everybody. That's that left mentality. But that's not what you see with leftists today. And I want to show a video really quick on what fascism is. Because this is a very good, I'm going to put the link to this video in the description. I think it's worth a watch. I was reading a lot of articles from the left, media, the so-called left. And actually, right now, I'm going to start calling the so-called left, I'm going to start calling them downers, because they're not left and they're not right. So where do they fit on the political scale? Well, I think they actually fit down, metaphorically and, um, systematically. Because, and it will make sense, I think, when you see this clip of this video. The purpose of this video is explaining what fascism is. It does a very good job. I'm not going to try to do a better job, because I think this video does a very good job. I've looked through dozens of videos and dozens of articles trying to find something edible that would be easy to share, that really gets to the root of what fascism is. Because fascism is a hard political, ideological concept to explain. And this video nails that on the head.
Further analyze individual political movements. For example, Nazism was quite different from Italian fascism, but they were both generically fascist. Extreme nationalism is the core tenet of fascism, which inherently makes the word difficult to define. Each nation has its own values, identity, and cultural idiosyncrasies. An English fascist utopia would look very different from a Mexican fascist utopia. By contrast, something like democracy does not inherently lean into national identity, so it manifests similarly wherever it is implemented. Fascism by its nature is different everywhere it appears. There's also no universal end goal for fascist regimes. Marxists work towards a classless society. Anarchists work towards a stateless society. There is no single, clear-cut objective of a fascist regime, other than the vague, emotionally charged idea of a nation's greatness. More than a single practical objective, fascist movements are decidedly negative. By this, I mean fascism specifically espouses what it hates.
Fascism specifically espouses what it hates. That is a core part of any fascist ideology or movement. And what are we seeing on the downers, the so-called left, the downers? The downers are constantly espousing what they hate. You can see that when they're out there hating the Jews. You can see that when they're out there hating the right. You can see that when they're out there hating America, hating the police. And the other part of that short clip was talking about how there is no inherent goal of fascists. Fascists don't want to build the country. They don't have a goal. They're not advertising to their populace that we're going to make better schools. We're going to make the taxes more fair so that there's more worker rights. We're going to have better roads. We're going to have better fire departments and public services and public parks. Those are leftist ideologies. A strong police force that is well funded and well trained, well educated. A strong firefighting corps that is well funded and well equipped and well trained and well supported. Good hospitals that are well funded with research in science and medicine. Good infrastructure, roads, good schools. Those are leftist ideologies. That's what leftist people want. That's what I want. Because I want to build. I want America to be great again. That's what leftists want. That is leftist ideology. But what are these so-called left, these downers in America? What do they want? They're not out there talking about what they want. Sometimes they are. Sometimes that leftist ideology spills over and they talk about that. It's weird because there's a little sprinkling of those leftist ideologies in there. You can see that because there's a remnant from what the left used to be. Those ideologies are still there a little bit because those are remnants of what the left is supposed to be and what the left used to be in America. what the left was in America when I joined the left, when I was, in my late teens, and I'm in my 40s now. That's what the left always was. That's what the left has always been since the French Revolution. So, but what is this so-called left now? What are the downers? What do they want now? They're out there espousing what they hate. They are pushing out on media, out on social media, out on the news media, constantly what they hate. They're demonizing people. They're targeting, labeling people. They're saying that all of our problems are their fault. They're accusing other people. They're stereotyping. They're putting people into buckets and saying, this demographic is the problem because of this, and this demographic is the problem because of this. Who does that? Fascists do that. That's what the fascists do. The fascists target the minorities that they hate, usually one at a time, and they blame all of society's problems on that demographic, and it's always the Jews that come first. And what are the so-called leftists? What are the downers in America doing right now? They're out on the street attacking Jews. They're breaking into Jewish homes and setting it on fire, like that Pennsylvania senator. That's what they're doing. So who are the fascists? The so-called left has become the fascist side of America. The downers are the fascists in America. Let's call them the downers. I think we need to start calling them the downers. They're not the left. They're the downers. And so here's this British Twinkie who was writing articles for The Guardian. And The Guardian is a very so-called left. It's a downer media channel out of the UK. And I wanted to address this as an example of how you can look at media coming out of the left. And obviously you can read the words and the rhetoric that they're pushing here, which is very hateful. But I wanted to go through this and show how I analyze this. So let's look at this claim that he's making here first. He says Donald Trump couldn't care less. So he links this as his source for where Trump couldn't care less. 3 days ago, he claims that Trump said, "I couldn't care less about the division within the country." The president, when asked about how we fix the country or come back together after Kirk shooting, says that he couldn't care less. The radicals on the right oftentimes are radical because they don't want to see crime. They don't want to see crime, worried about the border, Trump says. The radicals on the left are the problem, and they're vicious and they're horrible and they're politically savvy. I don't think they're politically savvy because they don't even know what political science is. They don't even know the definition of the left anymore. But anyway, he's saying that Trump couldn't care less about the division of the country and whatnot. So I tried to find any video clip of where Trump said the words "couldn't care less," and the only one that I found was when he was having a bit of a press briefing, taking questions from journalists, and they were talking about, I heard him say those exact words, "couldn't care less," in response to a reporter asking about the shooters and the extremism and what side that they probably came on, because they didn't have all the information yet. Again, this was 3 days ago, before they had all the information. I don't think they had even arrested the guy at that point. And he said he couldn't care less in response to that. So again, here's a journalist that is taking words completely out of context, applying them the way that he wants to push his agenda, and basically libel Trump for saying that he doesn't care about the country being unified and that he doesn't care about the country. That's not what he said. Maybe he's taking this from another source, but then why didn't he put the source here? A journalist, if they're going to make a claim that somebody said something, they always have to put a source. He didn't even list the source here. He's just putting text. The only video that I could find from this 3-day ago period where Trump said the words "couldn't care less," and I don't think he said those exact words anywhere else. Maybe he did, but the one that I found was in reference to something else, completely out of context, the way that this guy is reporting. So you can already see that this guy's reporting is taking words, putting them completely out of context, and then accusing somebody of doing something that they didn't. Now, if I can accuse Trump of doing something stupid, I'm more than happy to. But accusing somebody of doing something that they didn't do is a moral crime. It's a moral crime, and it's completely uncivilized behavior. And if you know that you're doing it, then you're a morally bankrupt piece of shit. If you're taking things out of context to try to accuse somebody of something, you know, fuck that person. And now the rest of this article goes into how he's saying that, you know, when Trump said that, directly responsible for the terrorism that we're seeing in our country today, the rhetoric from the left. The problem was not political violence in general, but radical left political violence. He's claiming that Trump said this, and Trump did say that. Now he says, put aside the inaccuracy of such a statement. Put aside the documented fact that not some, but all extremist-related killings in the U.S. in 24 were connected to right-wing extremism, just as they were in 23 and 22. Put aside that, although Trump listed incidences in which figures associated with the right had been attacked, he pointedly did not mention, and willfully chose to ignore, the murder of the Democratic Minnesota lawmaker Melissa Hortman and her husband in June, which was fucking horrific, or the arson attack on the home of the Democratic governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, in April, which was also fucking horrific, or an earlier plot to kidnap the Democratic governor of Michigan. That one was a right-wing extremist. These other two were white supremacists. And he says, put aside those. And those were horrible things, obviously. And those were horrible incidences. But then if you look at this claim here that all of the attacks in 24, 23, and 22, all of the extremist-related killings in the U.S. were connected to right-wing extremism, you can go to the report that he is citing to make that claim. And the report that he is citing to make that claim is from ADL here. And the thing with this report that I've already read through, and I'll give you some of the lowdown of it, is that the way that they categorize right-wing extremists is that they basically say that all of the, you know, fringe groups, whatever political agenda that they have, is basically all of them right-wing extremists. They've categorized white supremacists as right-wing extremists. Now, if white supremacists are right-wing, tell me an elected senator or representative in our federal government that is, or a governor of a state or whatever, that is a white supremacist. I don't know of any. I don't know any white supremacist senator or representative or governor in the United States. The closest that I could come to would be Marjorie Taylor Greene. She has some white supremacist rhetoric. She has some white supremacist views. And I think it would be fair, not fair, to put her in the bucket as a white supremacist. Sometimes she is, sometimes she's not. You know what I mean? And that's it. I don't know any others. I don't know any others that come even close to being white supremacists in the Republican Party on the right wing in the United States. So who are the white supremacists? And there's a big problem with white supremacists in the States. Well, they're the basis of the white supremacist movements and the groups in the United States are fascist, and they are white supremacists. They believe that they, as Aryan people or whatever, should rule over all others. And of course, race is a invented term. Like our societies have invented this term. Scientifically, race does not exist. We are one human race. We have different ethnicities, but we are one human race. That's a scientific fact. Um, so why are they just clumping these people together as right-wing extremists? Why aren't they considered and categorized as left-wing extremists? Because the so-called left, the downers, their behavior is much more relatable to the white supremacists in the States. If you were to compare right-wing people, their ideas, their behavior, their views with white supremacists, there's much less in common there than with the so-called left, the downers, and the white supremacists. There's much more in common. The fascist roots, the rhetoric, the behavior, the views, the hateful agenda, how they constantly want to tear and burn everything down. That's much more in common with the so-called left, the downers, that the white supremacists have. So why are they considering white supremacists as right-wing extremists? So this claim that he's making in his article to say that his statement that it is left-wing left radical political violence that's the problem, he's saying that that's an inaccurate statement. Well, no, it's not. No, it's not an inaccurate statement. And then the reason that he's saying that it's an inaccurate statement is he's citing this report, but this report clumps groups together into the right wing that are not right wing. And then if you look at this report, here's some interesting statistics as well. Most of the 2024 extremist-related murders were committed by white supremacists. 62% in 2024. So that's more than half just by white supremacists. And they're categorizing that as right-wing. But it's not right-wing. It's white supremacist. And then 23% were anti-government extremism of the sovereign citizen movement. Sovereign citizens aren't right-wing. They're anti-right-wing. They're also anti-left-wing. They're not on the spectrum. They're the whole sovereign citizen movement. They believe that they're not even on the right or left spectrum. They hate the right just as much as they hate the left. So why are they clumping them together and their actions together as right-wing extremists? You see what I mean? But this is what the so-called left, the downers, are doing. 3 out of 4 killings committed by right-wing extremists in the US are committed by white supremacists, which is basically to say that 75% of the right-wing extremist killings in the US in between 2015 and 2024 aren't even right-wing, but they're clumping them in. They're categorizing them in as right-wing. And the next biggest chunk of that pie is anti-government extremists, 16%. So now we have 75% white extremists and 16% anti-government extremists. How can anti-government extremists be right-wing when right-wing people are for government? That doesn't make sense. Why don't they label them as left-wing extremists if they're anti-government? You know who is a lot more anti-government? The so-called left, the downers. The downers want to defund the police. The downers want to destroy America. The downers want to destroy American institutions. Aren't they more anti-government than the right wing? Yeah, they are. Leftists are not anti-government. I'm a leftist. I'm pro-government. I like government. I want the government to be strong and healthy and provide public services. I want there to be a strong police force. I want there to be a strong, well-funded, educated fire corps, police, hospitals, healthcare system. I want there to be good infrastructure, good roads, good schools. I want teachers to be paid more so that our schools have more quality, better education. Those are leftist ideologies. That's not anti-government. That's pro-government. I'm not so much for private schools. I would much prefer there to be really good public schools so that everybody gets a good education. That's what leftists are for. That's what I'm for. That's not anti-government. That's pro-government. Right wing is pretty much the same thing. They have a few different ideas. You know, right wing might want to have more private schooling than public, or have the choice to do private and public. I think the choice is fine too, but I think that a strong public schooling system is the foundation. Sure, private schools are fine, but you still need to have strong public schools for everybody. Um, you know, and that's where left and right are a little bit different, but that's fine. You know, we both want the country to be better, and we have a different way of getting there. But we basically both want the same end goal. We want to build up the country. What does the so-called left want? They want to defund the police. You know, all this bullshit. So who's the anti-government extremists? Those are the left, not the right. But in this report that they're using as the basis of their argument, that it's all the right-wing people. Well, 16% of the killings are anti-government people. And who's more anti-government? The left extremists, the so-called left, the downers. You see what I mean? So this is how the so-called left, the downers, are manipulating data, lying about it, and then using that manipulated data to push narrative to blame the right when it's actually them. That's what's going on. And then lastly, if you want to actually look at the heat map of incidences of hate crimes in the United States over the last year, you can look at, for example, the extremists and police shootings, 13 incidences in 2024 of extremist police shootings. Terrorist plots and attacks, there were 23 incidences in 2024 across the country. Extremist murders, there were 11 incidences across the country. White supremacist events, now this includes things like the white supremacist rallies, the KKK get all dressed up and hold a rally, or whatever it is that those wackos do. So that's including all of that kind of stuff, but it's also including reported incidences of white supremacists committing crimes as hate crimes. Then there's no data tracking for white supremacist propaganda, and there's no data tracking for anti-LGBTQ incidences that's coming up on this. Now, if you really want to get your mind blown, you click this button. Anti-Semitic incidences. 9,354 reported anti-Semitic incidences, anti-Semitic crimes. So, yeah. Who do you think are committing all of the anti-Semitic incidences? I think we pretty much know who that is. That's the so-called left, the downers, the queers for Palestine, all of those nut jobs that are out there attacking the Jews. I don't think the Republicans are out there attacking the Jews. It's the Islamo-Nazi so-called left downers. And what is the hallmark of fascism again? To espouse who they hate, to target minorities one at a time, blame everything on them, attack them, try to destroy them, and they always go for the Jews first. So who are the fascists in America right now? Yeah, the so-called left, the downers. They've become the fascist party. They've become the fascist movement of the United States. And this is their propaganda. And here I am, an actual leftist that wants to build the country. I want America to be great again. You know, that's the whole MAGA slogan. I think it's stupid but brilliant at the same time, right? Because anybody on the right or the left should want to make America great again. And the thing is, the right seems to be pretty healthy in the States, and I'm glad for that. But the left is lost. The left doesn't really exist anymore. Our party has been infiltrated by Islamo-Nazi fascists. Our institutions have been infiltrated by Islamo-Nazi fascists. And yeah, that's where we're at. So if you're an actual leftist that believes in leftist ideology, which is to build strong public institutions and have good government and build the country and make things better, improve things, progress. That's the whole root of the progressive label. Then join me, because that's what we're here to do. And I can't recognize people like Jonathan Friedland, who's probably paid off by Qatar to continue fascist rhetoric and lie and manipulate data and try to blame the right, while they have no goal, they have no purpose. All they want to do is, burn down the country. And if you look at this guy's page on The Guardian, you can see every single article that he's writing is, authoritarian, fascist, calling Trump Hitler, the nerd Reich, how tech billionaires infiltrated the White House. Is Donald Trump too weak? Okay, well, first they're saying that Donald Trump's a dictator, and now they're saying he's too weak. Like, make up your fucking mind. What is it? Ignore the bluster as Netanyahu starves Gaza. You can tell. I use this as a litmus test. If somebody has a strong view on Israel and it's negative, that's a litmus test right there that they are a fascist, that they are uneducated, that they are morally bankrupt. Because there's never been in all of human history a nation that feeds the enemy that attacked them, except Israel. It's the only country in all of human history that's ever done that. And even though they're doing that, they're called genociders, even though they're the ones that suffer the genocide. They are the ones that suffer the genocide. And they're accused of what they are suffering. That is exactly the psychopathic mentality of a wife beater who blames his wife for beating her. That's what people are doing to Israel. They commit genocide against Israel, and then they accuse Israel of genocide. That's a very, very easy litmus test. And Charlie Kirk knew that. Charlie Kirk knew that. He talked about that all the time. Yep. That's where we're at, ladies and gentlemen. So this is how a leftist looks at so-called leftist media. We're out there, and we want to do our part, and we want to be participating in the great American democracy. But right now, we don't have anywhere to go. So hopefully we can change that. Hopefully we can make a home. I don't know if we even have to make a new political party that's actually left. I think the Democratic Party, I have no faith in it. I think that it's completely lost. And I think leftists are still voting Democrat because they believe that it's supposed to be closer to their ideology than the Republicans. But the reality is it's not. The reality is that the Democratic Party are the fascists in America now. And not all of them. Not all of them. I showed the video of John Fetterman, the senator. Can't remember what state he was from, where he was talking sense about this whole celebrating the death and the rhetoric that the left is using. He was saying it's ridiculous. He clearly said that Trump won the election and he is our president, whether we like it or not. And we need to, on the left, we need to come up with better if we want to win next time. And I completely agree with that. So there are some people in the Democratic Party, but I think the main people of the Democratic Party, the people that like AOC and the Rising Stars and the people that are really carrying the Democratic flag right now, they are anything but leftists. And they have infiltrated and taken control of our institutions. And you see Islamo-Nazi fascists like this gentleman here, writing from Britain, that have been infiltrated as well. So that's where we're at right now. We need to combat this and we need to fight this. Anyway, see you in the next video.